Hey everyone, it's Swank Ivy. A good 5 years ago, I posted a video called Asexual Bingo, and it was a good laugh making a literal game out of all the ridiculous pot shots people take at asexual people, but it was far from comprehensive in covering the kinds of comments we get. So here I am, half a decade later, revisiting the subject with Asexual Bingo 2. Things have changed so much since 2011. More people have heard of asexuality, we've been covered more consistently in mainstream media, there's been an explosion of inclusion in LGBT plus groups and fictional media, and I even managed to get a book deal for a subject that wouldn't have been big enough 5 years ago. But as far as we've come, there is still a ton of ignorance in the world, and one of the issues I've seen popping up a lot lately is that we don't actually face any attitudes or treatment that makes asexuality awareness efforts worth doing. And I think this video will tear that assumption into little bitty bits, considering these people who are saying these things are the people we live and work with every day. Please note going into this that every single comment I'm reading is a real comment that has been left on one of my materials or said to me in person, and any out asexual person will tell you that they've probably heard almost all of them before themselves. Consider this a trigger and content warning for sexually explicit language, violent and bigoted commentary, and just plain vile unpleasantness. With that, let us play Asexual Bingo. You're asexual? I'll turn you back to hetero, baby. Just give me 10 minutes in the shower with you. Don't you love how he says back to hetero? Everybody who's not straight obviously used to be. No one is asexual. Just because your father or some fucked up priest did some fucked up shit to you doesn't mean you don't like sex. No one is born without a libido. You might not even remember it, or you blocked it out. Get some help. Are you kidding me? I never even went to church. So gross how he's using get help for the psychological problem you clearly have as a weapon here. This is not how caring people ask you to care for yourself. It boggles my mind how people think that an abuse experience would have been so formative for me that it would have changed my sexual orientation, and yet they feel no qualms about bringing it up without any forewarning in an unsafe atmosphere just to shock me and shut me up. Not shutting up, sorry. An asexual person would, in theory, feel apathy towards sex and display no emotion when confronted with sexuality. Because that describes how straight people generally feel about sex with their own gender. Apathy. Indifference. Yeah, this guy gets to say what constitutes proof of asexuality in theory, as long as he defines asexuality as something that's neutral for us. Dude, there is a huge difference between being attracted to someone and being cool with having sex with them. Plenty of people do not want to have sex with people they're not attracted to. You make me sick. Take note, guys, my asexuality makes this person feel physically ill. You are stuck in an infantile state and quite simply find sex yucky. Why, you don't like what I like. You're so immature. This is either a defense mechanism or your lack of self-confidence, or, as said earlier, something fucked up happened to you in your past. Remember, I'm telling people straight up how I feel without shame, and everybody else is getting bent out of shape about how I should feel about sex, but I'm the one who lacks self-confidence here. Romance without sex isn't asexual, that's just being a woman. Men put up with romance so they can get sex. Women put up with sex so they can get romance. Congratulations on being an unremarkable woman. Now, if you had absolutely no interest in romance or sex, then you might deserve the label asexual. Oh goody, pointless sexism. Women are never sexual. Sex is always about men. Lesbians never have sex. And dating is just a bargaining chip for men to get some. You know, I don't date, but plenty of asexual people do. Remember, all you romantic asexual people, you're not really asexual. It has been scientifically proven that asexuals are frauds. Their bodies work fine, but it's all in their heads, and just about every single asexual can be trained to be sexually responsive. A lot of the time, mostly in women, the body and the mind aren't quite in sync. But there are no real disorders which can explain asexuality in a healthy adult. A lot of people tend to refuse the fact that they are sexually aroused as well, for whatever reason, but if you're healthy, you are sexual. 4 words, quote me the study. Scientifically proven? By who? There was a study on asexual people being trained to be sexual. A self-identified asexual person was trained to be sexually responsive. Oh, and asexuality was redefined as not being able to be sexually responsive. Oh wait, I forgot this was a guy whose data came out of his asshole. I'll say it again, you aren't asexual, nobody is. It's a trendy fad among faggots and bisexuals. In other words, queer people are pretending to be asexual because it's cool. Last time I checked, talking about how much sex you're not having is the last attention-getting stunt that's gonna earn you coolness points. If virgins and people who aren't getting laid are suddenly the hot cool item, I think I missed a memo. No one is asexual. They're just afraid of the dick or pussy. Yeah, he has a point there. Lack of sexual attraction is a lot like fear. Let's just ask all the straight people who totally failed to be gay based on fear of other people's genitals. Then why don't you make yourself useful to society and become a surrogate for people who can't have children on their own? Stop being selfish, you fuck. Remember everyone, the only way to be useful to your society is to rent out your uterus or become a sperm donor. The world needs more children and I owe it to my species. Come on, was this really meant to be an argument? Ha ha ha, asexual! I love the imaginary things people have to get attention and be different. Yep, I'm pretending to not want sex. Until I'm in my 30s. To be different. To rebel. To stick it to the man. By not fucking. Sounds like a plan. I can be content with a monk-like existence too, but that doesn't make me asexual, any more than being able to swim makes someone a fish. I guess this person would have a point if asexuality were a synonym for abstinence and not an identity that expresses my lack of sexual attraction to others. Your sad analogy fails. Would you have sex with someone to save your life and the life of your family and friends? A person with a gun enters your house and asks you to have sex with the friend of your choice. Would you do it? Well, not exactly a rape threat, but hey, let's introduce sex at gunpoint into this conversation. Just as a thought experiment, you know. I really hate these would you have sex if hypothetical questions, because what they're really trying to do is get me to admit that I could have sex, or see which friend I would choose so that they can make assumptions about my supposed buried desires. I could just as easily ask the person if they would kill and eat a human baby to save 50,000 other babies, and then make assumptions about their inclinations toward cannibalism. Many women are asexual in that they receive no gratification from sex. You're not special. There are many like you. Yet, I feel bad for you. You're missing out on quite an experience. Ooh, another commenter who has a special talent for packing a lot of fail into a very few characters. Okay, so let's make sure I've got this right. Women aren't supposed to enjoy sex, and yet I'm missing out on quite an experience. Women just pretend to enjoy sex, and sex is actually for the guys. And furthermore, I'm not special, so here's a nice side dish of pity. Do you think of yourself as introverted? And are you uncomfortable in social situations, possibly agoraphobic? I actually don't hear this one very often, but it's mostly thrown at me when someone thinks asexuality means that you have an inability or lack of opportunity to get laid. For the record, I actually am an introvert, though that's not the same thing as saying you're shy or socially awkward. However, asexuality has nothing to do with those things. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but somebody being shy or socially awkward or introverted being paired with being asexual does not make their asexuality fake. Y'all really need to learn what we're even saying it is before you try to explain it away. Your asexuality seems to be based on your dislike of men, rather than your apathy towards men and women alike. Are you sure you're not just confusing yourself with a shy virgin with a very low sex drive? I'll admit I bash dudes in my videos more often than I bash anyone else, but considering violent language against asexuality is more often perpetrated by A, people who find sex very personally important to them, or B, people who are pissed off that they hit on me and they can't have me, straight guys are the most common offenders. I don't hate men in general, I just hate when people act like that. Have you ever had a conversation with a very handsome man face to face and not felt attraction while looking into his eyes? Yes? This is like the nasty cousin of, well, if a hot celebrity propositioned you, you wouldn't be able to say you were asexual much longer. People who say this generally think that I would have to find some poor excuse for the tingling and butterflies I would undoubtedly experience at the sight of a very handsome person. Sure, I've had conversations with hot guys, looked into their eyes, and felt absolutely no attraction. In fact, this perfectly describes every interaction that I've had in that situation. From what I can tell, you are a type A personality. You have to control every situation, and you've convinced yourself that sex would divert that control. Armchair psychologists suck. I don't want to do something, so therefore, I must have control issues. After all, as a woman, my role in this world is to be submissive, and if I refuse to be, I must have a bunch of defects. Brilliant! Here's one from a straight guy in my video comments. I'm just saying, you can't say you don't like it until you have had it. I used to not like mayo and haven't even tried it before, and then I tried, and I put it on everything. Do you put gay sex on everything? Guess that's a condiment you mysteriously weren't inclined to try. I want this chick to get raped. Once you get the bitch to realize that shoving something in the hole between her legs actually feels good, this whole asexual facade will fall apart. Do you feel your rights as a human being are oppressed due to your asexual orientation? Hey, it's not like anyone ever threatens to rape me over it, right? I once had a guy kiss me aggressively after I said no, and I had to actively run away to get him to leave me alone. And he yelled after me that he was just trying to help me. And he harassed me online for months after that, trying to make me go out with him and telling me about how he was watching porn. Years later, when I talked about this in the media, someone said, you know, I'm trying to frame unplanned kissing as rape, and I want spontaneous sexual contact to be banned unless there's a signed contract. And he followed me around online claiming I'm making up stories for attention. People will constantly frame unwanted sexual advances as necessary and healthy. And they'll say that we're hysterical if we expect them to respect our disinterest. This is the attitude that gets people assaulted, and it isn't some theoretical playground. This has happened to people I know, and the culture that supports this attitude is the same one that protects other kinds of marginalization, many of which affect the asexual community. Don't you dare tell me that we have no reason to raise awareness about this because you refuse to acknowledge our problems as problems. You are full of shit. Being an evolutionary biologist, I call your self-proclaimed asexuality a complete farce and utter nonsense. Human genetics dictate that all males and females of our species are designed to the core of our DNA, that at some point in life an activation of several genes will trigger the emotional impact to have family and kids. More so for a female being than a male. If you are this way, it's only because of the society. Biology has nothing to do with this. Your limbic system of the brain triggered several neurotransmitters to other parts of the brain, such as thalamus, hypothalamus, etc., to release several important hormones that play along when an external stimuli hits the retina. In your case, a societal faux pas or some other issues that male genders have purported. You are this way because of society, if not entirely seeking attention. Oh no, science flailing. I hate these self-important asshats. First he invokes the argument from authority. I'm a biologist, and then he tries to throw in as many science-y words as he can. You don't have to name parts of the brain to bolster your oversimplified theory about how we exist to reproduce. Yes, most of us are wired that way, but do the 1,500 species of animals that have shown homosexual behavior get told they're doing it because of society? Somewhere along the line, you have to admit that not every single frigging thing that every individual member of every species does is about reproduction. Sometimes things are done just to feel good. I also love this smart babble about how external stimuli hits the retina. He's trying to say that I'm programmed to get horny when I see a cute guy, but it's hilarious to watch him try to do so in a science-y way. Not all sexual attraction is based on visual stimuli, and that would also suggest that blind people never feel sexual attraction, as if everything that we do is based on us liking what someone looks like. I think you like the idea of being attractive, but unattainable. Just a guess. I've actually heard that one before, yeah, because when people want me, and I don't go out of my way to discourage that attention by making myself very unattractive, it must be intentional. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Because then you'd get to go around telling yourself that every girl who looks nice is asking you to hit on her. You should stop trying to analyze other people because you were just bad at it. Unless you were born without ovaries and never menstruate and have no hormones in your body, you are not born asexual. No one cares if you don't want to have sex. You don't have to throw it in our faces. Just don't date anyone until one day the water in the shower hits you all funny and makes everything all gooey. Ah, the sweet smell of invalidation in the afternoon. Misconception 1. Asexual can only mean that your body lacks reproductive organs. Fail. Misconception 2. I'm throwing it in people's faces when I make awareness videos about asexuality. You're pushing play, so you're literally throwing it in your own face. Misconception 3. The shower physically turning me on would change my sexual orientation. Even if I bought a vibrator and used it, that wouldn't change my sexual orientation, so this fails really hard. And I really hate when people condescend and say, well, one day this will happen and you'll realize you were never asexual. Seriously, read an article. I don't really think I believe anyone can be asexual. Either you are straight or gay. I have a feeling she is just in denial. She's a lesbo. I know these things. I have a gaydar that tells me who is gay or straight. It's hard to explain, but I know a lesbo when I see one. Wow, that is groundbreaking, man. This guy's magical gay-finding powers make him able to describe my thoughts and feelings better than I can, even though I'm the one who's experiencing them. Somebody else's condescension-laced gaydar is obviously a superior way to tell what my sexual orientation is. It's fairly obvious that this is a medical condition, not something that needs to be cured, but obviously an abnormality, like being born with 4 fingers on one hand. Oh yeah, fairly obvious. Thanks, Dr. Tool. Psst. Actual doctors who study sexuality have determined that asexuality isn't by itself a medical condition, so you could always read an actual study, but why the heck would you want to do that? I can accept your indifference to sexual experiences. Trust me, if I can go with my girlfriend to bingo and shopping endlessly, you can spread your legs and fake it. Yeah, man, because it's something I should just be expected to do in a relationship, and having sex is totally like going to bingo. Not to mention that actually some non-asexual people find it to be off-putting when their asexual partner doesn't desire them the way that they desire their partner. Who'da thunk it could possibly be a turn-off when your partner considers sex to be an obligation? You know what? No, get out of here with your compulsory sexuality and rape culture BS. Oh dear Lord, what is it about millennials and their obsession with labeling themselves? This is yet another version of special snowflake-itis. As for asexual being an orientation, i.e. the need to stick a label on oneself, libidos fluctuate in everyone. This isn't news. It's also pretty clear that the writer has some other issues going on. She seems very shut down emotionally. Maybe she has no libido, but that's not the only thing going on with someone whose attempts at intimate relations seems to have ended in high school. Yay, another person who thinks we mean not having sex because we're not horny when we say asexual. Yeah, we know the word abstinence, but apparently you don't. And sure, I guess I probably seem pretty shut down emotionally if you read a short article about me and you determine that romantic attractions are the only emotions that count. And I can see how closely you read the article too, since you assumed I'm a millennial because you just love rolling your eyes at young people and using their youth against them to dismiss them. Even if youth was a good reason to dismiss someone's asexuality, which it's not, I'm Generation X, sonny. And since asexuality isn't low libido anyway, I think we can chalk this one up to willful ignorance. The attempt to play to the Puritan/new Taliban element that views all sex as bad shouldn't be encouraged. That's right, baby. By talking about what I personally experience, I'm trying to take the sex away from you and shame you. Wow. The worst part is she doesn't complain that sex hurts or something like that. She just doesn't desire to do it. I say grow up, lady, and welcome to the club. That's right, I have to have a reason besides my own feelings, like actual physical pain, before I have any excuse not to give sex to men. Biting down my own desires and putting up with sex I don't want is called growing up, because that's what an adult woman has to learn in this world. She has no agency, and becoming mature is all about accepting what someone else wants her to be. This is abnormal, flat out. Sounds like she has some sort of autism or a mental disorder to me. Looks like Dr. Toole is back. Not only is he shaming autism and mental disorders, but he's pretending laughably that he knows what medical science says about asexuality. Nope. Years from now, might she say, I just hadn't met the right man/woman. Too bad if I die a happy centenarian, people will still be grinningly assigning me pity for never having met the one. Judging by her looks, I think it's best for her self-confidence that she's asexual, as she probably wouldn't be getting much anyway. I just love the old, this is just to save face because no one would bang you anyway. As if there is actually an objective line of who's just plain too ugly to get sex. No, honey. But, tell yourself that it's about us not being able to get any offers if that's what you have to do to sleep at night. How selfish can you be? I spend roughly 75% of my waking life doing things I'd rather not do. Some I have to, like work. Other things I do in all my relationships because it makes others happy. Even if I felt zero sexual desire, I would try to please my significant other. Why do you think you get a pass? More violently phrased, how dare you not give sex woman nonsense. I'm sorry you think that's what I'm for, and that I'm selfish if I believe my wants and needs are as important as yours. Some people who have zero sexual interest in another person still have sex with that person for other reasons, but you don't ever get to tell me that I ever owe sex to another person. I do get a pass because I do in fact get to decide what my deal breakers are. And nobody who considers sexual access to my body to be their right has any business entering my life at all. There's no such thing as a romantic asexual, and no such word as aromantic. There is a word that describes you, misanthrope. I found a word for dismissive, self-satisfied jackasses like you too. Asshole. Gee, I love when people announce that things aren't real because they've never felt them and they're not in the dictionary. Wow. Asexuality is defined as being independent of sexual processes, but you've never encountered sex, so you can't say that you are actually, in fact, asexual. It does not matter if you haven't been attracted to someone, which could either be due to certain nurtures from when you were a kid or the lack of hormones. The former is more likely, as you seem to be perfectly normal, and a lack of certain hormones creates obvious psychological imbalances. Oh, great! So, demanding that asexual people undertake endless experiments to find a different answer and asking them to get their hormones checked is the reasonable way to react to someone discussing their attraction experiences. I wonder if we can do an objective experiment to find out what chemical imbalance makes ass clowns like this guy send insufferable letters challenging the sexual identity of strangers. Define yourself however you want. Asexuality is an incredibly small segment of the world population, less than 1%. It's selfish to push the awareness of this onto the general population when there are larger problems to deal with. And I'm not even talking about starving children in Africa. I'm talking about anything that is greater than 1% of the Earth's population. Yeah, it's awfully selfish to try to reach a largely isolated, confused group of people who are constantly getting messages like this. And after all, we're only talking about 3 million people in the United States, 65 million people worldwide. That's such a tiny, insignificant number. I'm so selfish. Last time I checked, the death toll for the World Trade Center was under 3,000 people. And no one says mourning those deaths is a selfish thing to do just because it struck less than 1% of the population. That whole "there are bigger problems we should worry about" logic is so ridiculous too. You don't get to decide what's a big enough problem to warrant discussion, asshole. It makes me wonder if an asexual's lack of sexual attraction sometimes goes hand in hand with an inability to experience love the way most people do. It's amazing to me how many people will totally admit that love isn't the same thing as sex, and they'll also admit that you can have sex without being in love, but as soon as an asexual person who has someone they're in romantic love with says that they're having that love without any sex, suddenly they're no longer qualified to describe what they have as love. Plus, I'm aromantic, and I'm really sick of romantic love being portrayed as the only kind of love, and then this whole inability to love thing being used to determine someone is deeply flawed or half alive or something like that. I'm just... Oh, wait. Oh, hey, I got bingo. To be honest, I don't really know if that's a good thing. I don't really want to win asexual bingo. In my video from 5 years ago, I jokingly asked, oh hey, what do I win for winning asexual bingo? And then I showed a screenshot of all the rape threats and death threats I get. The harassment really hasn't stopped, sadly. Every time I speak, I have to accept that I'm going to get comments like these. I wrote an article about the need for mental health practitioners to responsibly educate themselves about asexuality and why it's so important, and I got that published in Psychology Today, and the comments filled up with armchair diagnoses of my obvious mental instabilities and calls for my supposedly unqualified opinion to be removed from the magazine. Sometimes I do an interview and my Facebook messages will fill up with aggressive marriage proposals, and I'll get messages on Twitter about whether I can give people a blowjob. Sometimes I make a video and some asshole will link it on 4chan, spawning thousands of hate comments. But the worst thing about it is these people are not just trolls. They are saying the kinds of things that everyday people think and believe about us and say behind our backs when common decency wouldn't allow them to say these things to our faces. I have to make it into a game and laugh at it, because otherwise it's depressing enough that I would probably cry. So maybe this time, can I get a nice prize?